I want to introduce our three panelists. So first, to my left is Alex Volkhausen. He's been a member of the stage management team of the Broadway company of Wicked since 2015 and the Broadway company of Hamilton since 2025. Some other credits include Hedda Gabler, James Joyce's The Dead, 42nd Street, and the national tour of The Lion King. He's a trustee of the New York Philharmonic, the Public Theater, and is an advisor at the Lewis Center for the Arts at Princeton University. Please welcome Alex. Next up is Stephanie Chandra Smith, who is the Vice President of Creative at Situation, which is an agency built for experience-based brands. She currently oversees the agency's evolving multi-platform creative strategy and campaign development for live entertainment, arts and culture, and attractions clients. She's spearheaded innovative campaigns for clients including NBCU Cable Entertainment, One World Observatory, New York City Center, and Broadway hits like Mean Girls, Dear Evan Hansen, and The Color Purple. Please welcome Stephanie. And finally, Jenny Gersten is the Vice President and Artistic Director of Musical Theater at New York City Center, where she programs and produces the renowned Encore series. She sometimes produces commercially, including on Broadway, with Liberation and Beetlejuice, and the award-winning Pie Shop production of Sweeney Todd off-Broadway. Previously, she has worked at Williamstown Theater Festival, Friends of the High Line, and the Public Theater. Please welcome Jenny. So I read your bios, and everyone now has a feel for what you do, but I'd love it if you could, in non-bio words, encapsulate what you do in sort of your everyday job duties. So why don't we start with you, Alex?
Well, thank you for having me, and I'm very happy to be here. So stage man, I have two sort of tracks in my life. So one is being a stage manager, which is how I started. So when I am, it may sound strange to be associated with two shows at the same time. I am not full-time on either Wicked or Hamilton. I'm what they call a sub. So I am like a swing for the stage manager. So I go in when I'm called, I cover rehearsals, I cover the show while other stage managers are in rehearsal. Sometimes I think of myself as a sub, as someone who runs the show and is a human Post-it note. So when a problem crops up, I write it on a Post-it note and I put it on someone's desk, and then I leave the building. So that is one track. So for example, I was at Wicked for the last 3 weeks as they were doing their principal company changeover. So I was covering the show while stage managers were in rehearsals with the new principal company. And then I spent the weekend at Hamilton while they were rehearsing. I think it was a new Burr Hamilton cover, right? And so I was there to cover the show while they were in rehearsal. So that's one track. The other track is as a trustee, which means that I go to board meetings several times a year and sort of sit and advise the staff on whatever they need advice on. Some of it is financial, which is not my thing, but so for me, I go in and advise them on things, on production, on how advising other board members on how the production process works. That's what I do.
Well, and can you talk about stage management a little bit more for those who might not be familiar with it? You know, as we were talking, it's something that I sort of fell into in college for a little bit, and I wouldn't have done it had I not taken the class. So I didn't really know what a stage manager had to do. So what are those daily duties?
So for shows that are long running, so for the Wickeds, the Lion Kings, the Hamiltons, those and Juliet, the shows that have been running for a long time, you go in and you basically put together the company for that night, who's going to do what, who is out, who's on vacation, who's sick, who's injured, and then you basically get the show up to the curtain time. You rehearse whatever you need to rehearse. A lot of these long-running shows, especially the musicals, you need to, if you have a swing and a regular principal on at the same time, if there's a lift, you rehearse the lift, you rehearse anything technical. That is a daily occurrence. Understudies are on constantly in these shows, and they're always in different combinations. So you need to make sure that everyone is familiar with safety protocols and all that. And then once the show starts, we are the ones responsible for calling all the cues. We are the ones that are backstage making sure that this crews doing what they're supposed to be doing. Again, in long-running shows, inertia is your friend, but inertia can also cause people to sort of lose attention, which is completely normal. And so you're just being like, remember, you have to do the thing over there, and they go over and do the thing over there. So a lot of it is, I liken it to being a flight attendant. So sometimes if you're doing the job correctly, a couple things happen. No one knows that you're there, and you don't necessarily do that much. And then you really sort of spring into action when something goes wrong. Again, long-running musicals, there was never a performance where something doesn't go wrong. So you're always trying to make sure that when things go wrong, the plan B gets into effect and that everyone's safe and knows what's going on.
So Stephanie, very different track. You're in marketing and more. So do you want to talk a little bit about what your day-to-day looks like?
Sure. So my day-to-day in a thesis statement perspective is I get to take 2.5-hour experiences, sometimes 2 hours and 45 minutes with an intermission, depending on how long they are, and expand them in all different directions. Whether you've seen the show yet, haven't seen the show yet, we build a lot of worlds where you can spend time with your favorite shows, whether it's online, out in the world, experiential things. So that's sort of the best parts of the job. But what that means more tactically in my day-to-day, I oversee our creative team at Situation. So that means I work with copywriters, designers, video editors, our web team who's building all of the websites, our social media managers who are building all of the social accounts that you're hopefully following of your favorite shows. And we think about how can we be better connecting with audiences. Whether, again, that's before you come see the show and we want you to buy a ticket, or after you've seen the show, how do we make sure there's more for you to discover? When you're like, oh, I love that performance, or I love that song, I can't get it out of my head. How do we make sure there's music videos and things like that online for you to find? So I would say that's the short package of what we do. But every day looks different, every show looks different, and it also looks different because I work outside of Broadway as well. So we work with arts and culture institutions like City Center. We also work with attractions clients. So you might have heard of One Times Square, which is the new experience and observation deck. It's the building where the New Year's Eve ball drops every year. They have this really unique viewing deck where you're not as high as, let's say, the Empire State Building, but you're levitating above Times Square, which is a really unique perspective for a neighborhood in the city that can often feel very overstimulating, whether that's visually, sound-wise, but I've always loved the fact that we get to market how people spend their time, not necessarily what toothpaste they're picking. I hope you all brush your teeth. I don't care what toothpaste you use, but I do care about experiences and those core memories we can create.
Well, I definitely marked it down when I saw stuff coming up on my Instagram for One Times Square. I was like, this looks fun.
I mean, you get to be up close with the New Year's Eve ball, which is something you only see on TV or at a very far distance. There's something very cool about that.
Yeah. And Jenny, tell us about your day-to-day. You've been at City Center for a year or so?
5 years.
Oh, 5 years.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. I've been there a long time. I started there as a part-time or contractor producing all of the musicals there. And then they put me on staff. They made me a vice president of musical theater a couple of years ago. And then just a year ago, they named me as the artistic director when my predecessor, Lear de Bessonet, went to be artistic director at Lincoln Center Theater. So my day as producer and artistic director at City Center, and actually even my work when I do shows commercially, in my free time, is I work as a producer to make sure that the show we're making is clear, its objectives are clear to all the various stakeholders. And there's lots, right? There's stage managers and the marketing team, the graphic design, all the people that are thinking about marketing and how they sell it to the public, talking to the production team, the people that are going to help build it and put the designers together on it, making sure that the general manager is working in understanding the objectives of the show in terms of how they budget it and how they do the contracting. And I talk to our board of directors, or in the case of commercial, our investors, about why we're doing it and why they should be passionate about it and why they should, talk about it enthusiastically to everyone in their sphere of influence. And of course, I'm talking to my coworkers in the various departments at City Center to make sure they understand the why. And of course, I'm working with the artists once they start their process to see that they have what they need, that they understand the boundaries that we have, whether they're budget boundaries or the working style at City Center and the it's a lot of just back and forth communication and project management.
No, Jenny, I mean, producing is in your blood, as it were.
Yeah.
But how did you learn and skill up to become the producer that you are at this point, and how could students sort of track that direction?
So my dad was also a theater producer. He loved what he did, and I very much wanted to follow in his footsteps. So he produced theater. He started as stage manager, by the way. I started in. I guess I'm a Nepo baby, but I actually started with connections that didn't have anything to do with him. I started interning at summer theaters when I was in, I guess, at the end of high school into college. So I worked at summer theaters in the box office and house management, sort of doing those, what we call front of house work. And it was very informative just to kind of get into the weeds of like how audience members interact with the experience of going to the theater. And then ultimately, toward the end of college, I started interning at a grassroots theater mentorship program.
And Stephanie, we were talking earlier, and you said you've been doing marketing pretty much since graduation, sort of. But tell the students and folks here how you tracked into that at NYU.
Sure. I was a theater kid my whole life. I loved behind the scenes making of stuff. I bought This Is Dating Myself. I bought DVDs so I could hear the director commentaries and watch all of that footage. And when I went to school, I said, I don't think I'm going to be a performer my whole life, but I do care about the arts, and I'm also like connecting with people. So, and I've been talking since I was 8 months old. So I was like, communication sounds like the right place to start. And when I was there, I got an email that said, and I, again, was thinking more traditional, like you see in movies where they're sketching out a product and here's the sales pitch. And I got an email that said, marketing, internship, theater, paid. And I said, wow, didn't know those three things could go together. And that led me to interning in nonprofit theater throughout the city, particularly for kids and families, like the New Victory Theater and Tada Youth Theater, which are doing incredible work, putting on that type of programming in a way that's accessible, understandable for kids, not just in the city, but beyond. And then I was an RA my senior year of college, and I took my residents to go see Hair, which was an incredible revival being produced by Diane Paulus. And for those of you, if you're not familiar, at the end of the show, there's a huge dance party. They invited the audience on stage, like literally put railings on these stairs, like, so people can get up. And not only could we all go dance on stage, which we did, and as a college-age student is amazing, they had a camera, so they were filming it every night, and every night they posted that video on Facebook, which sounds so
Dance
cheesy
party
now,
cam.
but is like incredibly, was innovative at the time, even though Facebook videos sound cringy right now in the world that we live in. And I could show my boss the next day. He was like, oh, how'd that program go? And I said, you'll never believe it. Look at this. We were dancing on stage on Broadway. And a light bulb clicked for me. And I was like, whose job is it to make that happen? And when I did research, it was Situation. So I think my, advice on that front is look for work that inspires you, look for organizations that inspire you. Don't focus necessarily on the title or the job. That's going to change so many times over the tenure of your career. Look for the places and the people who are doing work you want to be part of, and that's how I found Situation, and I've been there for 15 years now.
That's great. Did you produce Hair? Yeah, I saw that 3 times.
That's so good.
It was so much fun. And Alex, you had a really interesting track. You were in architecture school, so tell us how that led to this.
Well, I had spent my whole life planning on being an architect from the time I was like 5 years old. I was always sitting around drawing houses. I was that kid. And so I went to Princeton, which at the time was one of the top schools in the world for architecture. And I also starting in high school, always did backstage stuff, but it was more of a hobby. And so in the middle of my senior thesis, which was designing a center for a now defunct company called the National Actors Theater, my thesis advisor pulled me aside and she was like, this is not going to work for you. And it was a very difficult thing to hear, but she was very encouraging and she gave me a lot of good advice. And she basically was like, when you talk about architecture, your eyes go dead. When you talk about shows, you get excited. and she was also like a community theater performer and stuff down in Princeton. So she basically made a deal with me. She was like, I will get you through your thesis without violating the honor code of the school if you promise that you will never pursue this as a profession. So I had a long, hard look at myself. And this was also before there were a lot of stage management programs. The earth had just cooled. So there was no, like every school now has a conservatory stage management program. There were like 3. There was Yale, UCSD, and I think Wayne State in Michigan. That was it. Columbia's program didn't exist. Like none of Rutgers didn't exist. None of the school BU's program didn't exist. So you had to learn on the job. And so I figured that once I could convince my parents that it was okay to have spent their hundreds of thousands of dollars on my education and go off and do something really stable like theater, it was a matter of finding an internship back when there were still unpaid internships, and I just took every job I could get, and every job I was offered I said yes to, and then and it was also some dumb luck of getting in with the right directors, with the right producers. Jenny was an early mentor of mine, and just being sort of in the right place at the right time with the right attitude, and that sort of all blossomed into whatever it is that I have now.
Well, so how do you see, you had the unpaid internship, how are you seeing younger people break into your field at this point? Are they coming out of those programs that are now established, or is it still sort of the internship path?
The internships, as I think as we all on this stage know it, are gone. So, which I think is not a bad thing. There's some negatives to that, I think, but that's not what this is about. That's a separate discussion on a separate panel. But I think that now with the schools, many of the schools are producing kids that have some not professional experience, but they have experience because they're in conservatory programs where there are actual shows that are produced and done like professional productions. And then what were internships are now, I think they're a lot of times called fellowships. And so they're basically entry-level jobs that are the equivalent of what internships used to be, like plus. So there's a little bit more responsibility, there's a little bit more, and they're all paid. So I think a lot of theater companies have that. I don't know if City Center has that, but I think Situation does have those programs. I know that you guys also sponsor those programs for other people. So I think there's a lot of opportunities out there. You just have to know where to look. But it's kind of the same ecosystem as just paid, and thus a little bit more competitive.
Jenny, are you seeing sort of the same thing with producing? Are there producing fellowship programs or anything along those lines?
There are a few that are for sort of more, there are a few producing fellowships. Women's Project has one for female identifying early career producers. And there's the Harold Prince Fellowship in New York City, which is a very prestigious fellowship for, I think, 2 fellows. I think it's a 2-year program. I can't remember, though. And then I think for a lot of people, it's really chutzpah. I find that a lot of young producers get in touch with me over social media or otherwise, and ask, you can tell they're just doing a lot of networking. Oftentimes they're looking for a void that they can fill, that they think where they have passion. I'm thinking of a young producer named George Struess, and they have started the oh my gosh, I just forgot the name of George's theater
Breaking
company.
the Binary.
But they started a theater festival. Now they've just produced something off Broadway, and they're really hustling to do work wherever they can find it. So I would say for early career or aspiring producers, it is just that seeing that hustle and putting it to work.
So
But
Matt?
I also think community is really important, and I think that's what these internships or fellowships are so good at providing is, for those of you who, have never worked in theater before professionally, the first thing you need to identify is who's going to be my community. What other young artists am I going to work with who we're going to come up together? And I think that's so vital in the theater industry.
The interns, the stage managers that I started with when we were all working for Jenny back in the 90s at Williamstown, we all still have a text chain that is active and was active as most recently as like 2 hours ago. So everyone has kids and they've all moved on, whatever, but they're all still sort of working in the business peripherally. But that community was so important.
Right, and in the early aughts, you were all getting each other work.
Yeah.
I mean, truly.
Truly.
Total coincidence that we're on this panel together. Really
Yeah,
amazing,
really
because we
coincidence,
have
yeah.
known each other a
So,
lifetime.
so besides a bachelor's or a master's in chutzpah, it's all about networking. So Stephanie, like you were talking about, that there are entry-level jobs at Situation, but talk about how networking influences people in your field.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was chatting with some folks earlier before we started the panel. I think what surprised me the most about becoming part of this industry and part of this community is people, despite how busy they are, how little free time they have because of all of the incredible things they're doing, everybody's really generous with their time and with their knowledge, and really champions the ability we have to shape the future of what this industry looks like and the ability we have to open doors. So I think networking can feel intimidating, it can feel formal. Reach out to somebody in their DMs, send somebody a connection on LinkedIn, ask people for coffee. More often than not, especially now with Zoom, they will say yes, whether it's in person or virtual. And trying to figure out what does your personal board of directors and your community look like is hugely important, because you never know where they're going to end up, where you're going to end up. Greg Noble was my intern many moons ago at Situation, and he's now an incredible, prolific producer. You just really never know, and I think if networking can feel intimidating, don't ever hesitate to just be yourself. And in college I called it the art of Zooming. We're on panels like these, or you're going to events like this, or you see something you love, reach out to the person. The worst thing that can happen is they say, I'm really sorry, I don't have time now. But the best thing that could happen is they say, oh, absolutely, let's sit down for a half hour, ask me any question you want. So that's going to be my ask for coffee.
Yeah, and besides individuals, are there any organizations you want to cite? Like some of the organizations that I threw myself into when I moved to New York, it was the Dramatists Guild, Stage Directors and Choreographers Foundation. They often had networking events. Are there any events that, there is a Stage Managers Union. There are producing organizations. Are there any orgs that you think people might be interested in?
I think for stage managers, the SMA, the Stage Managers Association, I've never been a member of it, mostly because I'm just from a different generation. It was a very different thing when I was first starting out. That is they have a drinks night every few weeks, and that's where a lot of people get a lot of work. I think it's still at Gallagher's. It used to be at Gallagher's. I don't know if it still is, but. And then there's also Facebook and social media groups. Year of the Stage Manager is a big one. I think there's a couple of others, but I'm only aware of the Year of the Stage Manager, where I have actually seen people get hired out of the chat, so or out of the messages back and forth on posts and stuff. So,
Are there any marketing groups that?
Yeah, they're not. This one isn't a marketing specific one, but a lot of roles on the administrative side of Broadway and the business side of Broadway tend to be male dominated, or were for a long time. So Broadway Women's Alliance is a fairly new organization within the last 5 to 6 years that has folks from all different, whether it's press, whether it is general managers, whether it is marketers. It's basically everything but being the actor on stage, and how do we build community at all levels. And some of their events are tailored towards parents, some are tailored toward entry level, but it's a great way to get access and meet people, both peers and folks who might be on that personal board of directors for you.
I was thinking about this. I think that Business of Broadway, which is a relatively young sort of startup educational website that has been trying to put more classes available for low cost or free. And I think working with that community of producers would be useful for some networking.
I want to ask you a few specific questions. This is sort of targeted to both of you. There has been a lot more video evidence of what stage managers do behind the scenes as of late. And I think it's probably encouraging people, and I think some of it's from Wicked actually, where the stage manager sets the phone or the camera in front of them and they're calling the cues. And I think it's really interesting. I think it's exciting a lot of people. And I don't know if you've worked on any campaigns. I think it's a little bit one-on-one, but things that have involved that. What do you think about that? Tell us a little bit. Have you been a part of it?
I have not been a part of any of those. I think it's great because I think it demystifies a lot of what we do, especially the calling of it. I mean, following somebody backstage, especially on a play, is sort of like watching paint dry, to be honest. It's not the most compelling content you could possibly create. But calling a show, especially shows like Wicked, Hamilton, Lion King, the big musicals, is, I think, very useful. I think when I joined the board of a different theater company, I encouraged the board members to trail the stage managers. And it was very informative because these are people who work in finance or law or whatever and have never been backstage in a show or haven't been backstage in a show since they were in shows in college or high school. And it was like, oh my God, this is actually this happens every night. And it's like, yes, girl, this happens every night. So I think it's very useful for people to see. I personally would not rather have my calls recorded for posterity's sake. I'm very, very good at what I do, but there's something for me personally about having that video evidence. If it's not perfect, I am not interested. And some of these shows, it's very, very difficult to get it perfect every time. I try every time, but I think it's great.
Have you been behind any of those things or incorporated any of those into your strategies?
Yeah, so some of it, one of the things that's happened coming out of the pandemic is we have social captains within all of our shows. And it used to be before the pandemic, you would hire an agency, which we still do, and shows still do, to do your content strategy. But now it's what does that partnership look like on a deeper level within the company? So whether that is somebody in the ensemble, a swing, usually it's not a principal because they have there's a lot going on. A principal's on stage more often than they're not. But how can they start to capture some of that energy and the electricity that's happening back scenes and behind the scenes of what's happening? But we also can sometimes put that front and center of the campaigns and how we talk about the show. I worked on the musical Finding Neverland, which was inspired by the movie many years ago, and we brought through Situation Project, which is a 501c3 affiliated with my agency. We brought a photography club from MS343 in the Bronx to the theater, and it was during a put-in rehearsal when a cast change was happening. They were doing a full dress rehearsal for the put-in, and we had a Broadway production photographer join us with the students, and Canon sponsored it and brought in cameras for the entire class and the club to come and shoot photography of the put-in rehearsal. Those ended up being, not only did the kids learn, hey, a production photographer is a job I can aspire to do that's a critical part of the theatrical experience, but they also, then we use those photos as our production photos for the campaign because it was a show all about imagination. So when I talk about expanding the world as part of my job and also showing visibility of the different roles that you're talking about behind the scenes, they can also kind of mix and match together. It doesn't have to just be one initiative or another. We try to do them in a couple of different unique ways.
So now this question's for the two of you. So Jenny, this is your first season producing and curating Encores.
Yes,
so
it's the first season I programmed it, exactly.
So we had High Spirits, which I saw a few weeks ago. It was terrific. You have the Lacusa Wild Party coming up, and then Lacage. And we talk about this because we go to Encores pretty much every year, but it really feels like a community that goes to Encores, that you see people from your neighborhood. You're always seeing your friends and theater family at Encores. So I think, I want to applaud you and City Center for cultivating that, but I want you to talk about how you choose a season, and then Stephanie, you've worked with City Center. I don't know if you worked on Encores specifically, but then how you would market that to create that community and cultivate it even more. So, Jenny.
Wait, does everyone know what Encores is? I just want to make sure. Okay, basically yes? Anyone feeling?
Let's give
pretend
them the
they don't.
summary.
What? Say that one more time.
Let's pretend they don't.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So New York City Center is a 2,200 seat theater in Midtown Manhattan that mostly does presenting, meaning we're not necessarily a producing theater. And we present some dance, we produce some dance, which means we commission and bring over dance companies that we think New Yorkers want to see. New York City Center's mission, just broadly, before I get into the Encores, is to bring the arts to as many New Yorkers as possible. We were founded by Mayor LaGuardia back in the 40s to be a palace for New York City, for the arts, for New York. So in addition to the dance programming we also do some musical theater programming. We do this thing called Encores, where we rediscover mostly musicals via their original orchestrations, their scores. We're interested in the music and the original scores that existed on Broadway when these musicals started. And so it's been around for over 30 years. They have done a lot of revivals of musicals, and mostly they're revivals of musicals you otherwise wouldn't see. And the last 5 years, we've kind of widened the embrace to include musicals that are a little bit more well-known occasionally, and also since we've been doing them for 31 years, we're starting to do ones that are more contemporary. So people who are my age or even a little bit younger might actually have seen these shows originally, the way people who were older than me would have seen something that was premiered in the 50s. So it's a very interesting time because I'm sure you know this, but with the rise of social media and specifically TikTok, musical theater has really has a greater fandom than it did 20 years ago when I started working in theater. You're all just way more knowledgeable about the form. You have a real passion for it. And so we're working with an audience of people who are older who love musical theater because they were seeing it in the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s. And we're working with people who know about it because they're following it online and they've started to attend it more and more. So we have these two very different sets of audiences that love musical theater and specifically love what Encores does. And I think that's the community that you're feeling. And I program trying to bring those two different groups together by programming sort of trying to cut a nice swath of things that are for those different audiences. Was that generic enough? That was so generic.
No, but it makes sense. I mean, when you say that, you can see the progression from High Spirits, which was a golden age musical. You have La Cage, which was
The
late
80s, yeah.
late 80s, and then you have Wild Party, which was later 90s,
yeah,
which
yeah.
I did see on Broadway, and so you are catering to that crowd and in such a diverse manner, I think. So congratulations,
Thank you.
Almost midway through your first season. And so let's talk about what Jenny was talking about, which is the TikTok musical fandom. How are you working that into your campaigns?
It's exciting. I mean, I think there's so much that it's an interesting question because a lot of shows when they used to debut, they needed a poster, they needed a singular look, and then once a show was on its feet, it could get its word of mouth. And that's sort of inverse now. Any new musical is investing in content, and you almost want to see how the thing gets built. People are incredibly passionate about musical theater, as Jenny was saying, and they don't want to wait to see it on its feet in its most full, pure, perfect form. They want to feel like they've been invested emotionally from the start. And it's a tricky thing to wrap your head around a little bit because when we take so much care, not only are we partnering with producers, we partner with the creative teams on these shows, we partner with the cast members as well, but we want to respect that they are creating something. We want them to take swings and not be worried that it's going to end up on TikTok when they're not ready for the world to see it. So it's an interesting balance, and we pride ourselves in what are these trusting creative relationships that we can build, and how do we make sure that we're investing in that content and folks are getting compensated for that great content that's happening early. But I do think, one of the stats that I come back to, which is new coming out of the pandemic, we did a survey across all of the shows that were running on Broadway about, the first time we did it was in 2022, and we've done it recurring ever since. We did a generic survey. It wasn't about what's your favorite show. It was just about your relationship to musical theater online. And the stat that is most astounding, but when you hear it, you're like, oh, I guess that does make sense, is 50% roughly of your audience, of your social following, will never actually see your show.
Correct.
Whether that is because financial limitations, geographic limitations, they are here but something is limited run, they're not here at the right time. But 88% of the 50% who will never see your show would recommend your show to somebody, which is it's true, but it's like such a wild stat to think about. And it's true because we all are, if you like theater, you become the theatrical ambassador, I feel like, for your circle of friends who are not within the theater.
That's it.
What should I see? What should I, I'm coming into town, or this tour is coming. What looks good in my season of my local theater? And social media has changed the way we program because it's not just programming the 2.5 hours on stage, it's world building outside of that. And for people who can engage, whether they've seen the entire 2.5 hours, or they've seen 2.5 minutes of a music video.
Well, think about that. How many of you have heard of Ride the Cyclone? This is one of those things. That show played like this much of a run off Broadway. I saw it, but I bet many of the ones of you raise your hand kind of know it probably better than I do. But how many of you have seen it? Seen the whole thing live in a theater? Right. One run here.
Wow, amazing.
But that's one of those things that has the following, but people haven't actually seen it, but they love it so much, and might be a future encores, or you bring back the off center.
Yeah, or establish.
I didn't just reveal anything. Don't worry. So I'm going to ask one or two more questions. We are going to have microphones in the aisles if you want to start making your way to them. But let's talk a little bit about beyond theater, because you've all done things beyond theater. Jenny, you were involved. One of the things you mentioned that you've been here before. Mm-hmm. You were executive director of Friends of the High Line.
Yeah.
So talk about that a little bit. And how you fell into that potentially.
I was working at Williamstown Theater Festival. It was my second time working there. They had named me artistic director a couple of years before, and I got called by a headhunter. Like a recruiter, and they said, would you want to interview for the executive director of the High Line? And I was like, well, I love the High Line, but I don't know anything about running a park. And they said, well, we're looking for someone who has culture in their portfolio, understands what live experience is, because now that the High Line is built, they were kind of about to open the third section. We think it's much more about curation and and events. So we think you might be a good match. And so I went for it for a bunch of different reasons, and I got the job. I mean, it was really it was a very big deal for me when I got that job, and I was surprised at I was surprised by it.
And did you feel that your theater background and what you had done prepared you for that job?
I think so, and I think that they were looking for something really different, and so I fit that profile, and I went into those interviews with a great deal of confidence, like almost confidence that I don't normally possess. It was wild.
It worked. And Alex, you don't just stage manage theater. We were talking about, had you been to this theater before, and you were like, maybe, because you do corporate events a lot. So
Yes.
do you want to talk about the difference between theater and corporate events?
So,
you got into that?
Corporate events are basically, just as a sort of a brief overview, are basically non-theatrical shows. So launches of products, things like the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas, pharma shows, car shows, auto shows, all of that kind of stuff. Political events, conventions. They could also go into things like live award shows like the Oscars and the Grammys and the VMAs or whatever. So there's a whole crew of stage managers that do just that. There is a little more overlap between Broadway and corporate now than there used to be. It used to be back in the day you had to pick. So I started doing corporate events as a way to fill in between shows. Initially for working with a stage manager who I had done a theatrical show with, who brought me in to work for the Clinton Global Initiative. So I was the stage manager for the Clintons for 12 years. And then from that, I also started working with private equity firms, with pharma, with cruise lines. I mean, you name it, I've done it. And it's the same job. And it's the same thing. People are walking in, they're sitting down, they're going to watch something. And the big difference is that instead of it being like song and dance or actors speaking lines, it's executives talking about a product or their company or whatever, and it's all about screens. So in this day and age, there used to be these very famous shows for a company called State Farm Insurance, and they had musicals written by like Richard Rodgers. And those days are gone, although I actually am ironically working for State Farm in Las Vegas in May. But you can actually buy the album.
Well, isn't there bathtubs over Broadway?
Bathtubs Over
There's
Broadway.
a documentary,
Yes, a documentary
Bathtubs
about
over
it,
Broadway.
So I think I probably did in 2005. I think I did the last show, one of the last shows, which was a huge thing at Radio City for Samsung when they launched one of their phones, and it was, when I say they spent money, oh my God, they spent money, like $10 to $20 million for one 45-minute presentation. I've never seen anything like it, and this is. This was like right before the crash, the 2008 financial crash. So now it's all about screens. So now you walk into a room, and it's basically a gigantic video wall on a huge stage, and it's just video content and all stuff that Stephanie's company produces a lot of this stuff. I have done a lot of shows where Situation has produced the video content for that have, and these are shows that you have. Promise you do not want to see these shows. There is nothing interesting about these shows, but you are very much part of a process where the executives on stage have something to say to a captive audience that is interested, either it's an internal meeting or whatever. So that is a world which I sort of flow in and out of. The money is the primary reason for doing it. Also because I have a lot of experience, I know how to create the experience that the executives and the company is looking for. That is all because of my theatrical background. If you have a theatrical background in this world, you can pretty much, people think that you hang the moon for like turning on a light. I can't even tell you. So they're like, oh my God, you're walking on water. So it's a great it's a great alternative way. Situation is a wonderful way to get into that world. There's a lot of companies out there that do this. I will say the money as compared to Broadway there's no comparison. The money is nuts. And the work is interesting, and the best part about it is that you walk out of the room and it's like the show is done. There's no homework. You throw all the paperwork in the trash on the way out the door, going back to the airport. So, and it's great, and there's a community in that world too. I have a crew of guys out of Atlanta that I see all the time on shows who are the greatest guys, and we have a really good time working together. And the producers that I work with are. A lot of them are former theatrical people who we all understand and we all kind of talk the same shorthand, while the non-theatrical executives are over here talking about whatever it is they want to talk about. And so it's a very different thing. It's the same, but it's the same job. It's literally the same job.
Stephanie, do you feel similarly?
Yeah, I think for me, specifically working on the creative side of advertising, the biggest difference that I talk to people about is when you're working for, let's say, the New York International Auto Show, which in a similar vein was a client I worked on for a decade. You're working with, your partner is a marketing person. So they have they're very passionate about what they're doing, but their creative tastes and impulses are not as much a part of the equation as far as my day-to-day, my team's day-to-day is concerned. Whereas when we're partnering with an organization like City Center or a producer like Jenny, we often are coming to the table for our first meeting, and this producer's been nurturing this show and growing this show for sometimes 8 years before any agency is ever attached to it. And we have to sit down and say, let me tell you exactly what your show is. That's an incredibly vulnerable position to be in, but you're collaborating with a fellow creative mind, and for some people that's really exciting. And some people, they would rather be with the executive who says, take it, tell me when it's done, and then come back. So that sort of tends to be the biggest difference as far as the creative side of advertising is concerned.
I think we have our first question. We have theater royalty. When you're asking a question, if you don't mind saying your name, and if you're at a college or a school, please let us know.
Or how you're a royalty.
Yes, how?
I mean, can't you see it?
Yeah.
My name is Jennifer Zorov. I am still considered a recent graduate, dual MBA from Pace University in Arts and Entertainment Management. I have a question for Jenny and for Stephanie in the sense of when you work with different companies and you're hired as the strategist for like marketing, and say, I don't want to mention a certain show, but a certain show doesn't make what it was projected to make, who gets that blame in a certain sense? Like,
That's a great question.
I understand that you might like punt it around because it's the arts. Everyone has you're part of the team, but in the same sense, like Stephanie, on your team, you might have a lot of people and a lot of brands right now are letting Gen Z flow. Just whatever you want, especially if you see corporate accounts, you're like, who let this person do this? But sometimes it goes and sometimes it doesn't. And in the ways that it doesn't, I just see a room full of like, I want to say elderly executives being like, who did this? Who allowed this to happen? So who takes the blame and how do you explain that to your stakeholders?
Want me to start?
Sure.
Well, okay, so from the so basically what Jennifer is talking about is that oftentimes commercial ventures, Broadway shows, take a whack at an approach of how to market their show. Tell me if I'm describing this correctly. And then the show doesn't make money. For whatever reason, it just doesn't gain traction. It doesn't excite the public interest. It can sometimes be a multi-million-dollar venture that just falls. I mean,
Or vice versa. There might not be, they don't put as much money into, a lot of people are skimping on marketing, especially right now in this time. And it's like, oh, well, we'll get it like word of mouth or like, we're doing fairly okay. And then to see how that, sometimes it goes, sometimes it doesn't.
Right. So when a show doesn't make money, when a show's not being successful and it's not making money commercially, different than nonprofit, oftentimes you'll see the agency get fired immediately. It is the easiest scapegoat, especially the social, because there can be a marketing agency and a social agency. Situation sometimes is one of several marketing agencies in the room, for example. And it's I've seen multiple times, I'm sure you've seen even more, the agencies are the first ones to get blamed. But I don't, in nonprofit, it's usually a series of people that can be accountable. But ultimately, I think the producer's accountable. And I actually think the producer should be accountable in the commercial example too. But
Yeah, that was so kind of you to say. Thank you. No, it's true, but I do think there's equal. It's not punting the answer. It's just true. So many people. There are so many folks involved. Theater, commercial, or nonprofit is a team sport. There is not like a singular overlord who's making a choice that everybody else disagrees with. While the producer, the buck stops with them, they built a team for a reason to be their advisors. I think the thing that can be tricky is there are like two fueling forces. There's all of the marketing that we can do as a marketing team. We all know and I hope you do now when we leave this room, that the number one driver of ticket sales is word of mouth. And marketing can control what people know before the show is on its feet. They cannot always control what comes out of the theater once a show is seen. And sometimes marketing can overcome a show that maybe needed a couple more weeks, but opening night was set. Sometimes it can't. But I think as long as you learn from the ones that aren't as successful, everyone's better off for it.
It's also so the chatter on social tends to place blame too, whether it's warranted or not. So it's a very good question. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're going to throw it over there.
Hello. My name is Amy. I'm also a student at Pace University, actually. I'm a current student. I'm studying communication and media studies. But I also have a really big interest in the theater, obviously, which is why I'm here. And so this question is kind of for Alex, but also anyone else who this could be applicable to. So a lot of times, you were saying before how it's really like experience that gets a person a job rather than like what you study in school. But my question is, as a communications major, maybe not a stage management major, not a BFA, do you think I'm at a disadvantage for like getting jobs like in this industry that may have specific programs like stage management?
I don't think so. I will tell you one of the earliest pieces of advice is that I heard from a stage manager who's no longer with us, Artie Gaffin, who's one of the greatest stage managers that ever worked in this business. He was asked once, like, what do you look for in an assistant? And he said, I look for somebody who I want to have lunch with twice a week for the next year, every Wednesday and Saturday for the next year. So, and that's what this business is. I will not lie, there are certain early connections that you can make at a BFA or an MFA program. Period. So like BU and Yale, like there's a mafia on Broadway. Like if you walk into any theater's office, you're going to see BU and Yale people. And they are very good at their jobs. But that's not the only thing. It's really what Stephanie said. It's about reaching out to the stage management offices at all the Broadway shows, because we're now in a situation where the people who started, everyone who is now that I am aware of who is on a Broadway show, any of the teams, all started out at this level. And what I mean by that is they started out doing the exact thing that you are about to start doing if you would like to be a stage manager or any theater professional. You are going to be networking, you're going to be emailing people you don't know, who you've never heard of before, who've never heard of you. And people, I think, in this business genuinely want to help. And I think that is all you really need to know. There are a million ways you can get a hold of the stage management offices on Broadway. I would not know how to search, except there's a list that one of the stage managers puts out every week. But there are public ways through Instagram and through whatever socials, and all the stage management offices will respond. So, and in terms of the skills, I'm telling you, anyone can do this job. It's not brain surgery.
She's studying communication, so she's like ahead of the game as far as I'm
I
concerned.
think in a way, you are learning skills that some stage managers sorely lack. So I think that it doesn't matter. You don't need to know. You can learn on the job. Most of this job, stage management. This is stage management specific. This does not apply to what these guys do. You can learn on the job and be as ahead of the game as anybody else.
Anything to add? Does that apply to your careers as well?
I mean, I would just co-sign all of that, I think. At first, when I decided to major in communications, I was like, that's so broad. Does anybody, what does that mean? But it means you know how to talk about your skills. Mm-hmm. So I think staying curious and understanding what the priorities are for that role, being able to have lunch with somebody 2 times a week for a year, and being able to talk about yourself through that lens is going to be your superpower.
Yeah, and the thing that Alex said, I also really want to highlight it and underline it, which is those of us that work in the industry, we are interested in the next generation of people who are going to practice it, and we're interested in specifically how passionate you might be to be part of our funny little industry. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Hi.
Going this way.
My name is Naya. I guess I graduated Hunter in 2022, so right when the pandemic, oh my God, the world's ending. Right, so as you know, I'm in my mid-20s now, and I just want you guys to touch on patience, because I'm in my mid-20s. I'm a freelance production assistant at the Billie Holiday Theater in Brooklyn, but it's just okay, when is my momentum coming? Hey, I'm showing up, for myself. I'm reaching out to people on LinkedIn. I'm not paying the subscription, so it's I'm at a certain disadvantage when reaching out for so many people. So can you talk about the importance of patience? Because the pandemic, the recession, everybody wants to be a storyteller, everyone wants to do this, it's oversaturated. So can you touch on the importance of patience for people like me who's trying and saying, no, I have a dream and I'm gonna do this, but it's when is it coming,
It's a beautiful way to phrase that question.
I mean, I would start by just saying, not to say you need validation, but it is very normal and real to feel the way you do, and the fact that you can articulate that is just shows maturity, beyond your years. I think there's, at least on the agency side, social and digital media have democratized storytelling. To use your phrase, everybody is a storyteller and everybody has the tools to do it. It makes it harder to stand out, but it makes perspective and taste all the more important. And I think patience and time are the critical ingredients to building taste and perspective. I think being a freelancer, my ears sort of perked up, because for agencies, we have a full-time team who is our core, but the volume of work can flex dramatically. And agencies now more and more are utilizing production freelance resources to help augment their team, and they are just as valuable to any project as a full-time hire. And while it does not change the level of patience you may need, it might give you some of the momentum and the wind in your sails, because a lot of our full-time hires for us do come from folks that we freelanced with first, because now you're in the fold, you're in the rapport, and as soon as that work level is sustained as far as revenue and projects we have coming in, it makes it easy to convert those hires. So I will say, everybody's freelance journey looks very different. Some people want to be freelance, that's their gig, and you can have an incredibly fruitful career doing that, working across a lot of different companies, organizations. But if that's ever something you're interested in, I don't know if you're video freelancing or what your craft specialty is.
Production assistant, so I'm
PA.
Yeah, so
You're
PA,
in this.
yeah. So, I mean, there's never a shortage of needs for PAs, especially in this business, in all the things that we're creating. So I would reach out to whether it's our agency, there are 5 or 6 other agencies who do this in the theatrical space. We're always looking for that, and might not be full-time to start, but it's a great way to sort of get your foot in the door.
Yeah, I think, just really quickly, I seen a AKA ad for Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, and my teacher, who's now working for like a different New York City agency now, but she produced like Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, in the Cursed Child, and I was like, oh my God, so even if I'm not on the stage being a star, I can like produce this. So I was like, okay, this is fun. So she really talked about the importance or the difference between advertising and marketing, where, one, it's just like you're selling a product, but the other, it's like you're selling an experience. And I feel like it's very true to us, as I'm a native New Yorker. Experience is everything, vibe is everything, and just culture. So thank you.
Wait,
I'll
but
talk to you
Naya,
next.
can I advocate for you to be impatient? Can I
I'm
actually ask you
impatient.
to like lean in harder with your frustration and like,
Really?
yep, and just
Can I
think,
scream?
if you need to. It won't get you very far, but it might motivate you to activate something differently about, like, I got to identify people I want to talk to. How do I find them? Who should I want you to take the next level and not just be messaging people on LinkedIn. I want you to like get a little more
Stalk
frustrated.
them, got it.
Yeah, it's really, for me, every single job I got was about the chutzpah, about me happened to be in a certain situation where I was like, I'm going to go talk to that person because I want to work at their institution. I may not be ready yet, but I'm going to start knocking on the door with them right now.
Thank
Great.
you. I will find both of you in the bathroom.
Fine. Exactly correct.
Hello, my name's Nathan. Thank you guys for this panel. It's been really informative. Wow, this is really...
You're doing great.
Hey! Thank you. I'm a recent graduate of Northwestern University, just graduated in June, and studied theater and cognitive science there. And my question is kind of hitting on what you just mentioned, networking. Because this industry is a little bit different from other industries, it's not a linear career path. So it's been hard to kind of identify people that are like horizontal or vertical networking opportunities. So how do you identify or determine the best people that you can reach out to and network with that will just like land and stick the best?
I think it depends on what you want to do. Like if you want to go into production, either stage management, company management, or any one of those, production management, the technical fields, it's basically looking on a show's website or a nonprofit's website and seeing who's in those departments, and then messaging them either through social media or direct emails, or God forbid, an actual letter, like printed on a piece of paper with a stamp, which
Most heard me
also
all day.
What?
like I know stamp. Look it up. It worked. That actually works. So I know that Wicked has a very active fellowship program which they reactivated after the pandemic, after a couple of years, and the 2 most recent candidates got hired because they sent letters, like actual you
Right.
open it up and
Right.
Angela Lansbury typed it on type.
Little wax on
whatever.
top, yeah.
And so that I think, but it depends what you want to do.
Yeah.
But also, like, if you've identified a place that you really like aspire to work at, and sort of, or a person that who inspires you, I would seek that place or people at those places out.
Yeah. Okay.
And I would say I would be less worried about is it horizontal or vertical, because those dynamics change so quickly in this business. Somebody who is an assistant company manager on one production will very quickly become the company manager and like on the next production, and it can sometimes, I think, be a distraction if you get too focused on the level, because the industry is small. Like, while Alex and Jenny have known each other a long time, and this is the first time I've met them face to face. In talking, we were like, oh, you know this person, you know this person. So even if you don't know somebody personally, 6 degrees are even smaller in theater. I think it's
Yeah.
maybe 3.
It's like 2 degrees.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Jaylene. I'm a intern at Cencom, and I'm also a freelance creative specializing in digital media. I wanted to know, how do you balance as a creative or like in the creative field, how do you balance working in your passion, but also like separating your passion from your actual job? Because I know I've been working like some projects on 24/7, and I have to balance like set myself boundaries, have some time for personal life, have some time to like work on projects.
Please teach me.
The struggle is real.
When you find out, let us know.
I wish we were doing it.
Yeah. I think the one thing I will say is I try to think about it at like macro level. I think that balance is not going to look the same day to day. There are going to be seasons where you are working like 120 hours in a week, and that's not even physically possible. And then also, I think maybe this just helps me sleep at night if we don't win a certain show that I'm really passionate about. Finding ways to, it's nice sometimes if we're not working on a show to remind me of why I love theater. I love our clients, I love everything we work on, but sometimes it's nice to like keep the mystery of why, like you're not thinking about the ad meeting you just had a week ago. And you're not thinking about how you're gonna sell next week. You can just think about the art form and appreciate it. So finding places that, are work adjacent if you love the industry, but are not the specific project you're working on can help.
Amazing, thank you.
Hi, Andre, college dropout, and yeah. Firstly, great job on Wicked. Now, my question for everyone: what is your biggest early career mistake you made starting out?
Ooh.
I have 2 very distinct answers. So I was offered a workshop of a musical that was 3.5 hours long based on La Boheme. And I turned it down to do a different show, which wound up in the toilet. So that was an early career mistake. Though talking to people who actually wound up on the show, maybe it wasn't a big mistake. But anyway, so that was an early career mistake. I picked the wrong show, and that is something which I think all of us have done. The thing where we have gone in and thought, oh, this is going to be it. This is going to be, Rent, Hamilton, chorus line, and it turns out that was Rent, Hamilton, or chorus line. Another mistake that I made early on was I had a misplaced sense of who I was in the larger picture of the business, and I wasn't the most helpful on a particular project, and that was a huge mistake. Of showing up with expectations of sort of grandeur and glory, as opposed to showing up and being like, how do I help this project flourish? That was probably the second biggest mistake that I made, and I have not made that mistake since.
All right. Yeah. Thanks.
Are we all doing it?
I mean, yeah.
I really don't want
to go
Alex to be the only one. I thank God for the mistakes.
Yeah.
I just want to say, thank God, because I thought that's the only way I get to learn. But I'd actually cite me taking the Highline job as one of my bigger mistakes in my career. Leaving the theater behind kind of miffed a lot of people, confused a lot of people. It took me 10 years to get kind of back in. I gigged for 10 years after I left the Highline. And I mean, again, one of the best growing experiences of my life, but also for sure one of the hardest lessons to learn. So I think that has to do with being too big for my britches also. So I think trying to stay humble is key.
And I would echo that, because for me, it's less of a specific example, but learning how to take feedback. I think especially when you're entering your career, that confidence is critical, never lose it, but understanding where to be humble and understanding even if you are an expert, there's still other perspectives for you to consider is huge.
There's an
Thanks for the
expression
question, though.
in theater that actors get, just take the note. Everyone should be able to just take the note. You're not going to question it, and you're not going to advocate for yourself in that moment. It's about just take the note and be quiet.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Hi, thank you all for being here and taking time to spend with us. My name is Madeline. I'm affiliated with Fordham. I just recently graduated with my MS in Media Management, and I'm extremely passionate about hopefully working within the ad marketing side of theater. And so this is for Stephanie Bells, for everyone. How do you continue to build partnerships and relationships that really last the test of time? I know that you guys have echoed about community. That's like the biggest, most beautiful thing about this industry. How do you guys continue to start those relationships, and then how do you continue to foster them?
Oh man, so many ways. I think it is continuing to show up and never assuming. I think all relationships are genuine, but they also all take work, like any relationship in your life. So how are you continuing to show up for the people in your community? I see a lot of the phrases having a resurgence online. If you want a village, you have to be a villager. I don't know if y'all are seeing that content or if my algorithm is trying to tell me something. But I think it's true in any relationship, and I think you can't just show up to this community, you have to actively participate in it. And I think that's huge. And I think accountability is another one, because just as much as if a show doesn't do well, you might part ways on that show, but that doesn't mean the next show isn't something you're going to collaborate on together. And I think knowing when to take accountability allows you to just build further trust. So it's I hope that answers your question. I think there's so many ways, but I'm curious.
I mean, I would just say be like a passionate audience member. Like, go see plays, go see musicals, go see workshops, go see readings. You don't have to pay money. I mean, I know like theater's super expensive, I get it, but there are ways to get comps. There's ways to get subsidized tickets, or at least go to readings, which are free. Most theaters will find ways to promote those, and be in the room. Be in the room. Be able to talk about the art form. Be able to talk about the people who are making the art. I think that's undervalued.
I mean, when you say community, I have a very different idea that comes into my head, because it's the people I work with all the time. You know, you never know who. What's the expression? Like, whoever you're going to see on the way up, you're going to see on the way down.
Yeah.
Like, in theater, it's a little bit different. It's sort of like you never know who you're going to see in the next show. I mean, I showed up at Wicked, and I didn't think I knew anybody in the building, and I knew like 25 people, you know, cast members and crew people and whatever. So you never know where they're going to wind up. So it doesn't behoove you to make enemies, because this business is this big. So especially when you get to the Broadway level, it's really tiny, and that's what makes it it's what makes it so great, is that it's a family.
Yeah.
It really is a family,
Yeah.
even though. It doesn't always feel that way, but it really is.
And being supportive is huge, you know, when you're supporting your peers. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Amaranta. I'm an illustration student here at SBA. My sister's favorite musical is Hamilton, and my favorite musical is Wicked, so I was really excited to see this. I wanted to ask, you've talked a lot about networking and everything, but every time I go to these panels, I see so many people, and I get really nervous, because I think like everyone is gonna try to do the same networking. So you as an employer, what could make me stand out from others, that like you look and make you want to hire someone, and like make myself stand out?
I would say, not to echo Alex what you said earlier, right now, like I do not have any jobs posted on my team or otherwise at the agency. So I think, while yes, that might be your long-term goal, think about how do you make a connection with somebody just at an interest level. Your goal coming out of today is, who's somebody I want to go have coffee with? Who's somebody who I want if they send me an email, I want to help. Like, I want to help them, I want to give them that perspective. I think it takes some of the pressure off, because one conversation isn't going to lead to a job. It's about building that relationship that then makes it less or more comfortable and gives you more confidence when those opportunities appear. Because there are some that are sitting in the wings, but that's not always the case.
I mean, that's a pretty good answer. I mean, I think the thing that's, I mean, you've probably heard it a lot already tonight. The thing that makes you stand out is where you're, you know, is if you can share your passion. I think that's the thing that makes you identifiable. It's like, oh yeah, that person really wants to, you know, or really cares about this one thing. You know, Wicked. Now I know that about you. You love Wicked. I was like, well, that's really interesting. What did she love about Wicked? Like, I want to know more about that. So, you know, I mean, I think Yeah, I think the specificity is so critical, like who you are as an individual, and how that stands out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alexander. I'm a senior at Brooklyn College in their television, radio, and emerging media department. And I've been speaking with a lot of my professors and program heads about some of these similar topics, basically boiling down to asking them, like, how do you get a job? Not like, how do you apply to a job? How do you network a job? How do you put yourself in a position to hear about it? Like, how do you get a job that, like, has healthcare? And you've talked a lot about like those things as well, and I'm trying to find an answer or something that doesn't, in my mind, essentially boil down to you got to get lucky. You just got to be in the right place at the right time and hope that someone saw you and liked you, because that what it feels like a lot of this comes down to is like you just got to get lucky.
Is the healthcare the most important thing to you?
It's up there.
Okay.
I mean, also being
it's-
involved in the industry that you want to be in
No, I
and
got
like
it.
working passionately and all of that as well.
Well, I think you can be strategic. Like I would say, I think that there are some, like for instance, I would say a nonprofit organization is more likely to be able to provide you health care and benefits than a commercial theater job, for instance. And I would say that getting into a nonprofit theater job, if you don't care at all about like what you're doing, I would say the development office and nonprofit organizations, museums, theaters, dance companies are all broke. But anyway, just in general, cultural organizations at nonprofits, the development offices, the offices that do fundraising have the highest level of turnover. So if you can, and I heard you, speak a sentence, write a sentence, if you can be articulate and you want a job in a nonprofit, I'd start in development. That is how I started, by the way. I got very good at asking people for money, and that turned out to be a very useful skill for the rest of my career. You always, no matter what you do, you need to be able to ask people for money in some way or shape or form. And so that's for one thing. The other thing I would say is like general management offices, company managers. That's a pretty good union. They have high turnover. So if you're more interested in like the producing / management aspects, that's good. You can also, I hate to say it, start in a mailroom in an agency, like a talent agency. The mailroom jobs, it takes a couple years, but you will advance in those agencies if you can work.
I think the biggest thing about entry-level jobs in this community and at this point in this community is resilience. So one of the things that is lacking amongst a lot of the people coming up is there's a lack of resilience. So what that means is, I'll give you an example. So there is a Broadway show that opened a few years ago. I think it actually might have opened pre-pandemic. And the stage manager on that show was one of the few stage managers has a Tony Award for her work. So she is the Rolls Royce of stage management. She is somebody who has done every show known to man, and she is beloved and respected in this business. She had a production assistant. Opening night for a Broadway show, stage managers become delivery people. That's, you arrive at the theater 5 hours before the curtain, and you change out of your opening night outfit into like sweatpants and workout gear, and you hump flowers and chocolate and bottles of wine up the stairs from the stage door to dressing rooms. That's just a little fun fact about Broadway opening nights for stage managers. So you put the glamour away and that's the job. And that's not written down anywhere, it's not in a rule book, but that is the job. I have done 20 Broadway shows, and that is what I have done on every single Broadway show. On this particular Broadway show, this particular stage manager said to her team, okay, this is a big company, there's 35 people on this show, I need you all here at 1 o'clock tomorrow, the curtain is at 6:30. And one person on that team, entry level, said, I'm not a Sherpa. And so that person has not been seen or heard from since, has never done a Broadway show since. The person who said yes, I believe, is now the PSM at Anne Juliet. So resilience means saying yes to things that you don't want to do. It means showing up when you're tired. It means being the person that you want, that the people that you work with want to have lunch with twice a week for the next year. So I think that, and giving that in a job interview is evident. We all that have ever hired somebody can tell that in a second that this is a person who is going to be someone that we want to have lunch with. So if you give that energy and you are that person, you will succeed and you will have health insurance. I promise.
I just want to add something to Jenny's point about nonprofit, not just theaters, but nonprofit arts organizations in general. I don't think you're all aware of how many exist in this city. And I think a great place to go is like New York Foundation for the Arts, and many of you have never heard of that before, NYFA. NYFA has a great job board, but there's so many regional organizations, like each borough has its own arts council. So like something there, or something at like, I'm going to throw two other organizations out you've probably never heard of, Fractured Atlas or The Field. I used to work at Fractured Atlas, and these are organizations that help artists. So these are organizations, again, nonprofits, but that you may not be aware of. And one of the questions I love to ask, and I've always asked when I'm starting to network, is what don't I know that I don't know? And it really opens up doors, and I always get a different answer to that question. So one of those questions you can ask is like, I am unaware of many organizations in the city, so like, where could I even start to look for them? And I think those are the ones with healthcare, so I definitely agree with that. And after on my soapbox, we unfortunately only have time for one more question. I know you've all been standing. We are going to take them out to the lobby, so we can try to. I'll Sherpa them out to the lobby. And so I appreciate everyone's patience, but we do have time for one more question.
Yes, hi, my name is Leo. I major in economics but minor in theater. I have great interest in theater. I recently interned at National Alliance for Musical Theater as a production management. I had such a great experience over there. So I think this is a great time to get a free advisement from all of you because I'm a president at the theater club at Baruch College. And it is very business oriented. So it's been very hard to sort of get the students' attentions from getting interested in the arts. So I'd love to hear your advice on terms of how should I entice these students into joining the arts, as well as the theater club at Baruch College. The arts organizations have been disappearing and appearing sometimes like that. So how should I make sure that the club lasts long after I graduate? So that's also I don't know. It's a difficult question.
I mean, I do a lot of advising down at Princeton, which is not exactly known for its theater program. They don't really have one. They specifically do not have a theater major. And it's very difficult because the needs of the students churn every 4 years. So I've been advising them since 2013, and basically every 4 years the mission changes. So it's very difficult because you get a group of kids who are interested and then they graduate. So I think part of it is trying as much as you can to get the freshmen involved as much as you can. I don't know how Baruch works in terms of how the student organizations work. One of the things you're fighting against is like everyone's so busy these days, especially in college. You're over-scheduled, you're over-programmed. But I think it's always about getting as many freshmen involved like the first week of freshman year. That's how they do it at Princeton, is they have these gigantic student club fairs, and the theater companies and the dance companies and the singing groups are the ones that are obviously the loudest and the most present in your face.
I was going to say, karaoke night.
Huh?
Karaoke night.
Karaoke night. Do karaoke.
But Leo, can I offer something, Leo? Maybe that what I'm hearing you say, it's not your job really to worry about the future of the clubs, but what I'm hearing you say is that you have a passion for theater and you want to share that with other people. So what you're really asking is like, how can I be an inspiring leader? That's actually, so you have to do that by sharing who you are with those other people and what excites you. And then hopefully they'll just gravitate to that. That's really, it's just, you're asking about leadership.
Yeah, you're right.
Go for it.
Yeah,
you can do it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I want to thank everyone, Alex, Stephanie, Jenny. Let's give them a round of applause. I want to thank our staff here at SVA Theater up in the booth and out in the house. And I want to thank Center for Communication. Camila is going to come up and say a few final words, and let's give them a round of applause.
They deserve a bigger round of applause. Thank you all so much. As I mentioned, we're gonna grab our panelists. They're gonna share a little bit of their time. Plus, please remember there's a couple of questions we didn't get a chance to ask. So allow for them to continue networking, right, and practice those skills. We look forward to seeing you our next event next Thursday right here at SBA Theater. Thank you everyone for coming.